Some women cry when their world falls apart. I did not cry. I sat in my car in the dark outside my own home and I watched the bedroom light come on and I made myself a promise that changed everything. My name is Sarah. And I spent 3 years being the perfect partner to a man who was quietly, carefully, deliberately destroying me. Not with anger. Not with cruelty you could point to and name. Daniel was far too smart for that. He destroyed me with softness. With small suggestions that felt like love. With tiny moments of control wrapped so beautifully in affection that I thanked him for every single one. I left a career I loved because he said the hours worried him. I lost friendships one by one because he said certain people did not have my best interests at heart. I stopped wearing red because he said it was too loud for my personality. And I smiled and I nodded and I slowly became a woman I did not recognize. But the night I stood in that hallway with grocery bags in both hands and heard him laugh on the phone, that easy, warm, completely unguarded laugh he had stopped giving me, something inside me did not shatter. It woke up. I heard him say her name twice. He did not know I was home. I had come back early and the front door had barely made a sound and there he was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, completely relaxed in a way I had not seen in months. I stood in that hallway for what felt like a very long time. Then I walked quietly to the bedroom, put down the bags, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. He came in 20 minutes later and kissed the top of my head and asked what I wanted for dinner. I looked up at him and smiled and said whatever you feel like. And that was the last lie I ever told him. Because sitting in that dark room I had made a decision. I was not going to explode. I was not going to cry and beg and give him the chance to talk me back into doubting myself. I was going to be patient. I was going to be careful. And when the time came I was going to make sure there was no version of events where he could make me the villain of his story. He thought he knew me completely. He had no idea who I had just decided to become. I became very still after that night. Not cold. Not distant enough for him to notice. Just still. Observant. Present in a way I had not allowed myself to be in years because being present around Daniel had always required so much careful management of his moods and needs and expectations. Now I was present for myself. And the truth did not take long to fill the silence I gave it. Within days the pattern became undeniable. Phone always face down on the table. Replies that came too late and too short. A new cologne that appeared without explanation. Evenings that ran longer than they used to with reasons that grew slightly different each time he told them. I documented everything. Not obsessively. Quietly. Dates and times and small inconsistencies noted in a journal I kept at the bottom of my work bag. Then one Friday evening I told him I was spending the weekend at my cousin Rania's place. I packed a bag. I hugged him at the door. I told him I would miss him. I drove around the corner and I parked and I turned off my headlights. 2 hours later a car I did not recognize pulled into our driveway. I watched the bedroom light come on. And I felt something leave my body in that moment. Not love. Love had been leaving quietly for a long time. What left me that night was the last trace of doubt I had been carrying about my own instincts. I had not been imagining it. I had not been too sensitive. I had not been difficult or paranoid or any of the words he had used so carefully over 3 years to make me distrust myself. I had simply been right. I drove to Rania's house and I told her everything. Not the edited version I had been giving people for years. Not the version where I made excuses for his behavior and minimized my own pain to make everyone comfortable. The full truth. Every moment I had swallowed. Every time I had apologized for something that was never my fault. Every friend I had quietly lost. Every version of myself I had slowly surrendered. Rania sat across from me at her kitchen table and she did not say a word until I finished. Then she said, I have been waiting 3 years for you to say all of that out loud. I spent that weekend making 3 phone calls. 1 to a lawyer. 1 to my bank. 1 to a friend who worked in HR who helped me understand exactly what documentation I would need and what my options looked like going forward. By Sunday evening I had a plan. I drove home calm. I walked through the front door and Daniel was on the couch watching television and he smiled that easy practiced smile and said he had missed me. I set my bag down. I looked at him for a long moment. And I said, I know who she is, Daniel. The smile froze. And in that frozen second I saw everything clearly. The calculation behind his eyes. The rapid search for the right words. The decision about which version of the story to lead with. I had been watching that same calculation my entire relationship and calling it depth. I was done. I did not raise my voice. I did not give him the dramatic confrontation he could later use to reframe the story and make me look unstable. I had thought about this moment carefully and I knew exactly how men like Daniel operated. They needed you to break so they could point to the breaking. I did not break. I told him I had spoken to a lawyer. That I had reviewed every shared financial account and made copies of everything relevant. That I had documentation going back months. And that I had already arranged where I would be staying while things were sorted out legally. He tried everything he had. First the denial. Then the anger. Then the tears that came so suddenly and so perfectly timed that a previous version of me would have dissolved completely. He said I was overreacting. He said it was one mistake. He said I was throwing away something real. I let him finish every single sentence. Then I said, Daniel, you did not make one mistake. You made a deliberate choice every single day for months. And the only mistake I made was staying silent for as long as I did. That ends tonight. I picked up my bag and I walked out the front door. He called 11 times before midnight. I did not answer once. The months after leaving were not simple or clean or painless. There were nights the quiet of my own space felt heavier than his presence ever had. Nights I replayed everything and wondered what I could have done differently. Nights the grief arrived not for him exactly but for the version of the future I had believed in before I knew the truth. But slowly and then all at once things began to return to me. My voice came back first. Then my appetite. Then my laugh, the real one, the unguarded one that comes from somewhere deep. Old friends reached out when I reappeared and every single one of them said the same thing. We missed you. We never stopped being here. Daniel moved on fast. Men like him always do. They need someone to perform for and he found his next audience soon enough. But here is what I want you to understand. Silence is not strength. Silence is just pain that has learned to be patient. And the moment I decided to speak, not to punish him but to reclaim myself, everything shifted. He thought I would stay silent because I always had. He thought 3 years of being made small had taken away my ability to stand up straight. He was wrong. And the most powerful moment of my entire story was not the confrontation or the lawyer or watching his carefully constructed life develop visible cracks. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning 3 months later. I woke up in a room that was entirely mine. The light came through the curtains the way I liked it. There was no tension in my shoulders. No careful management of my words before I had even opened my eyes. Just peace. Simple and complete and entirely mine. That is what freedom feels like when you finally stop being afraid of it. And I will never trade it for silence again.